Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Tracy Brinkmann, business coach, success coach, podcast host, and product creator, and the Dark Horse Entrepreneure. Please enjoy Tracy Brinkmann. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I am here with Tracy Brinkmann, the Dark Horse Entrepreneure. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Mari, how you doing today?
I am well. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to chat with you about creativity. How are you?
You know what? Like I told you earlier, I am 3 shades of wonderful. That's just kind of how I look at the world.
I love that. What are your 3 shades of wonderful, if you don't mind me asking?
Believe it or not, it's something that I kind of started sticking to way back when. So, like everyone, I've had my dark times, right? I've had like 3, I'll call them, I did an episode on my podcast called The Roller Coaster of Tracy's Life.
Oh.
And it had 3 major dips, which when you're on a roller coaster, the dip is the most exciting part, right? Oh, you're right. Your hands are in the air, your eyes are bugging out. But in life, it's not quite the same, right? Mm-hmm. I went through a major bout with drugs, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Came out of that, without having to go to jail. So that's a good thing.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It got to the point where the police kicked open the door of my condo. So I was this close.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I came out on the shiny side. And then my second child, when she was born, had a distended abdomen, went through a number of operations before she was even 3 months old, and got on the organ donor list. She needed a liver and small bowel transplant. And unfortunately, that didn't come to pass, and she passes away at 18 months.
Wow.
Dip number 2, right?
Yeah.
And in each one of them, and I'm not trying to bring your show down, so stop me at any time, right? Yeah. So that's dip number 2. And then dip number 3 is, I was in a very long marriage of 20 years where it got to the point where we just, one of us went one way and the other one stayed on a single path. And it just drifted further and further apart. Yeah. And it wasn't a healthy further apart. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it came to the point where I actually dusted off my personal development 101 stuff and said, I'm worthy of better. Right. So that was dip number 2, going through that, coming to that realization, and then having the cojones to utter the words that I'm worthy. And trust me, the minute you say those words, sometimes that's when it really gets hard.
Oh, yeah.
And then coming out on the other side of that. So dip number 3. And so each one of those is a shade.
Okay.
A shade of wonderfulness, because you've got to, I figure if I can make it through all that noise, there's nothing that you can throw in front of me that I'm not ready for now.
I believe it. Well, now that you've made it through your 3 shades of wonderful, why don't you share a little bit about what you do these days?
These days, it's funny is I'm focused in really focused on the entrepreneur world. Mm-hmm. Wow, Tracy, that really narrows it down, right? I got into the coaching arena during my corporate America days. And when my daughter passed away, to keep myself from falling into the pit of despair, I threw myself face first, literally, into personal development. I lived in Atlanta, was working for Coca-Cola. If there was a Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, Peter Lowe event going on, I was there. 3 days, 5 days, whatever. So and coming out of those, I applied much of the stuff that I was learning, which I saw reaps and huge benefits from. And people started coming to me, how are you there was one time in 3 years, I had 5 promotions. Simply as a result of applying the very things that all these gurus are trying to teach you, right? And it really is as simple as it sounds, but it's harder than it seems. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
So that introduced me to the world of coaching. So coming out of corporate America, I started narrowing down on those solopreneurs, entrepreneurs that are just trying to maybe break out of corporate America. They're trying to get out of the cubicle cage. And then most recently, I've narrowed down even more into the podcasting arena that you and I are enjoying.
Yes.
Helping people find their voice, how to use their voice, and quite often how to make a couple of dollars with it as well. We do podcast editing and promotions, and not those promotions where some of those folks from overseas is, hey, I can get you $50,000, 50,000 downloads, but true, get your name out there, get your podcast some honest listeners and real people to pay attention.
I love it. That's fantastic. And definitely really helpful in the world of podcasting these days.
100%. I mean, I think it's really blowing up. Obviously, I think the events of the past couple of years have helped that, in that burgeoning. But I know I started podcasting in 2007. So I was podcasting before podcasting was cool.
Yep. Nice. I'm in almost to my second year. So that's
right on.
Yeah. That's super fun. I love talking to other people and talking about creativity, which is what we are here to talk about today. I'm so curious with your history and your life and what you do currently. Many things sound very creative to me, but what does it mean to you to be creative?
I think for me, the first thing that pops in my head is just being able to create something out of nothing. That's usually the way I would explain that. So whether you're an artist and you've got a blank sheet of paper, nowadays it's probably more of a blank video screen where you start drawing. I know my daughter she's a mad drawer. She has the screen and she does all this crazy stuff that I used to have to do with a pencil, right? Or it's a canvas or a screen where the little cursor's blinking at you and you're ready to type words. That flow, it's taking it just out of the ether and channeling it through you, right? And I think that's where the magic happens, is being able to imbue you into it. One of the first, I'm gonna call it a philosophy book and follow me through here. One of the first philosophers that actually resonated with me was Bruce Lee. Right? Now, mind you, when I first started learning about him, he was on big screen back then. But I started reading a lot of his books behind the scenes, and one was called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. And one of these statements that he said in there was, absorb what is useful and discard the rest, which as a quote by itself is pretty cool. But the next sentence is, and add what's uniquely you. So in his world, he was taking martial arts and boxing and this style and that style and absorbing the pieces that he felt were useful, discarding the rest, and then adding his own personal spin to them. And we know how that worked out for him, right?
Yeah.
I think for all of us, whether you're a logical kind of guy like me, I mean, I'm a geek when it comes to computers, but if you can release your creativity into that, even us, number geeks and logic folks can be real creative.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes me think what you said, getting 5 promotions in 3 years, that was absorbing a lot of information from people, keeping what is helpful, discarding the rest, and adding your own flavor, if you will, or imbuing it with your own style.
Exactly.
I love that. What a great quote. Absolutely.
You remember that one.
Yeah, I will remember this one. Yeah. But I imagine, even through learning things and keeping some and discarding others, you come up against challenges in your life. I mean, you shared plenty of them.
Oh yeah, right.
But how do you face maybe more creative challenges in your life?
Probably it would depend on the challenge, right? So if it's
Mhm.
something like, let's throw something out like, oh man, what am I going to talk about on the podcast next week?
Yeah.
Right? Which can be a challenge for anybody who's a podcaster or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Oh, I got to create my next ebook or painting or picture or whatever. Oh, God, I'm so tapped out. I think that very thought process
Mhm.
crushes your
Mm.
creativity. One of the habits I found most watered my plant of creativity early on
Mhm.
was whenever I got an idea, I would write it down. Or when I first started doing this, of course, we didn't have the cool phones with a notepad or anything like that. I had a little tape recorder with me. I carried with me all the time, and a
Mhm.
journal. So I have journals. But whenever I would get that idea, if I was
Mhm.
driving, I'd grab my tape recorder and I would speak into it. I even went so far as sending myself voicemails. Right. So
Yeah.
if I couldn't access my tape recorder's on the other side of the car, I can't pull over. I used to grab my phone, send myself a voicemail. That way I didn't forget the idea.
Mhm.
And I think what this helped solidify was my brain said, oh, well, he's actually paying attention when I give him these creative thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
So here, let's give him some more. And if you get to that moment when you don't have a creative thought going on, you can go back to your voicemails or your
Mhm.
notes or your journal, wherever you're storing these pieces of these amazing bits of universal consciousness, right?
Mhm.
And then as you start reading through them, your brain gets back into that mode. You're like, oh,
Mm.
that's what I was thinking. It helps pull you out.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Here's a great example for you. So I wanted to write a book, and it's still not done. How about that?
Mhm.
And so I was like one of those, like everyone else. I'm gonna sit down. All right, what do I want to write about? I knew what I wanted to write about, but I know nothing about writing a book. I knew it needed to be 200 pages, 18 chapters, blah 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 blah. All that. I knew all the data.
Mhm.
Now it was sitting down and says, now how do we do this? And someone put out this cool little course, and I'm going to synopsize it here in about a minute for you. He
Mhm.
says, what you do is you write down a question, whatever the question is, just write down the question. Now, what I want you to do is read the question to yourself and think of the first three words that come out. What's the first word that comes into your brain? Potatoes. Okay, write down potatoes. What's the next word that comes in? I don't know. Podcast. Okay, podcast. And the last word is black. Got it.
Mhm.
Fine. Now what you're going to do is you're going to set yourself a timer for 3 minutes. That's it. Just 3 minutes. And you're going to start writing. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to start with that first word, potato.
Mm.
And then as you write for the next 3 minutes, and your fingers should keep on going. Don't worry about spelling, grammar, just let it flow.
Uh-huh.
Incorporate those other two words. Here's what tends to happen. The potato gets you started.
Yeah.
And as you're writing, you're so focused on how do I flow in black and podcast that you're not worried about what am I going to write about? How am I going to say it? You get rid of all the criterion that is holding you up, and it
Mhm.
just starts to flow. And you're
Mm.
like, here's what generally happens is the timer goes off, 3 minutes is done, and you keep right on typing.
Yeah.
And you can do that. And you do that, for an hour a day. You can have a book done in about 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like I said, mine's
Absolutely.
not done yet. But it works. It pulls down. It's just a little technique that helps pull down the barriers,
Mhm.
because your head gets all jacked up and everything else that's going on, but
Yeah.
you're like, okay, potatoes are a great vegetable. I don't know. It can be silly. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
stay in the book, but it starts the process of writing.
Right, exactly. And it also sounds like you're really tapping into that subconscious space,
Mm-hmm.
allowing your conscious mind to take a break and your subconscious mind to show up even
Yeah,
more.
because generally, if you're going to write about something, a blog post, an article, whatever
Mhm.
it is, the content. You're
Yeah.
just struggling to get started. And if
Mhm.
you grab that first word, okay, I'm going to write about this. And the first word that popped in is entrepreneur. Cool, that's fine. There's entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
then black and potato and podcast. And once you get going, man, it's like rappers that say, give me 4 words and I will create a rap song. It's the
Yeah.
same principle. They're so used to doing it that they can just and start hinting out.
Yeah, that they've used that structure of neural networks in their
There it
brains
is.
so
Yes.
often
Yeah.
that it's so easy to access for them with 3 words, 4 words. And yeah,
Yep.
so that practice, that repetition helps you continue to, as you
100%.
said, get rid of the other chatter
It's it.
that's happening.
It's it.
Nice.
It's there was a movie, I forget what it was. It was one of those baseball movies. And the lead character, I want to say it was Kevin Costner, but I can't remember. It said, clear the mechanism. Right.
Oh,
And he was getting ready to, he was like, he's in the middle of Wrigley Stadium and he's getting ready to do that first big pitch. And, the
yeah.
guy's out there, he's all like ready to go. And you hear it's internal,
Right.
clear the mechanism. And all of a sudden, shoo, everything goes quiet. You can see the audience and the lights, but everything goes quiet. It's the same kind of thought. You get rid of all that noise so that you can do whatever it is you do.
Yeah. I love it. And great reminder too. And a little like technique to hack it.
Yeah.
To
There you go.
get you started. I love it. That's great. Well, I'm super curious with all of the things that you've done in your life. What's your earliest memory of being creative?
Oh my goodness. My earliest memory of being creative is probably, wow, we're going to go back to late 60s.
Okay.
I was a drawer, right?
Yeah.
And here's what's funny about it is I sat down and I drew this picture, and it was a cliche kid looking picture, right? It was a fellow with a sombrero, and he was in the front yard, and there was a fountain I can remember it pretty vividly,
Yeah.
obviously, right? With a little crank and the bucket, and there's a house in the background. And I drew it when we were visiting my grandma and grandpa in Minnesota, southern Minnesota. I'm German heritage. And I took it and I finished it all off. And now my grandfather is an amazing artist, right? He does all these pastels. They're beautiful. He creates little 3-dimensional structures you build them with cardboard, and then he would cover them with stone, and they were like stone. He was a stone mason by trade. So he would just build these little stone things. And at Christmas time, the whole corner of the house was like this beautiful tree with a city underneath it. It was crazy. So here I am, little kid, I'm drawing him in color with paints and the whole 9 yards. And I bring it to my mom and dad. And my mom's like, like any parent, oh, this is beautiful. My grandfather said, why is the grass brown? That was the first time I come to realize I'm red-green colorblind.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So I had gone through my life doing in my colors. I saw the grass that color. And so that was the color I chose to do it. And here's the weird thing about that. That actually almost completely turned me off from doing anything in color after that. Because I became worried about, whoa, what if it looks wrong, right?
Yeah.
Which made me completely amazing when it came to pencil shading. I started sketching in pencil like crazy, and I learned to shade so well, using toilet tissue. And later on, they created those little nubbins that you could, put on sandpaper blocks. That occupied probably the most of all the way through my teen years. And then I taught myself how to draw with pen as a result of that. I want to avoid doing anything in color. And it wasn't till I was probably in my 30s that I picked up a paint set again, thanks to, who's the guy with the big fro? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Bob Ross, thank you. Yeah. One of his kits, right? I bought it like Hobby Lobby. Yeah. And it was like everything you needed was there. The colors were labeled, and he just kind of walked you through in the video. I thought, okay, I remember Rob Ross growing up, and he was the man. So if anyone's going to be able to teach me how to paint in color again, it would be Bob. And I did like 3 paintings, and each one you could see I got progressively better. But once I did the cliche mountainscape with the little friends on either side and the little stream, and I was happy with it, I put it away, and I hadn't touched it since.
Wow. I mean, that's so fascinating, just to the experience of wanting to put color aside and taking it through pencil and pen. And then what do you think, like, do you think in your 30s you were finally ready to bring color back into your life? Or
You know what? I had the self-confidence to tackle it, right? Now,
yeah.
mind you, in my teen years, I painted cars like crazy,
Yeah.
right? I did as a side job, I started doing stenciling and
Oh,
lettering.
okay.
But again, the colors, the customer would come to you and say, I want this color with this color
Right.
pinstriping and this kind of treatment. Well, then the colors were chosen. I
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about it because they picked the colors for me. Now I could
Mm-hmm.
suggest colors, and I had friends that would help me with that didn't have my affliction.
Yeah.
But generally, someone came to you and they say, I know what color I want my car. Could you paint it for me? Sure, no problem.
Right.
So, that was like a transition piece. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was probably that confidence that came back. Oddly enough, it was right at the summer on that time. I was throwing myself into the whole personal development arena. And it was like, step there. All of them teach you to step out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So that was stepping out of my comfort zone. Yeah, I draw
Yeah.
in pencil all the time. Yeah, but do you do color?
Ah,
So I
right.
stepped out and I did okay, and I stepped back in and I'm okay now.
Nice. I think that's such a great reminder. I think oftentimes people imagine that taking a step out of their comfort zone has to be a big, like
Mm-mm.
enormous step. But hearing that your step out of your comfort zone was going from pen to color
Yeah,
feels, it's close enough to the comfort zone to not
right.
completely dysregulate you.
And that's what I tell all the people I coach, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's, just giving them personal one-on-one advice or actual business coaching. It's okay.
Yeah.
If you want to grow, you have to step out of your comfort zone. It could be a big toe step. It could be a full foot step. You don't
Yeah.
have to jump, like the long jump and do 12, 17 feet. You
Right.
just put your toe out there and then bring
Yeah.
it back.
Yeah.
And over time, as you keep doing that, you actually grow your comfort zone bigger. So
Mhm.
what was a big toe, a month ago, right, is now almost in the center of your comfort zone. You've gotten so comfortable with it. So you just keep growing it. It's like the old adage, if you throw a frog into a boiling hot pot of water, he's going to jump out
Uh-huh.
because it's hot. But
Right.
if you slowly raise it, well, you'll probably end up having, frog legs for dinner.
Right.
It's just it's a good version of that, right? But you can
Exactly.
slowly, boil your pot of water
Yeah.
a little at a time.
No, I think it's it's a great reminder that even small steps outside of our comfort zone can have big impact
Oh,
in
huge,
our life. Yeah.
100%. Of
I love it. Thank you for sharing that story, and
course.
I appreciate it. When you think of kind of the everyday challenges that you face in your own life, what are some everyday issues that you've had to use creativity to solve?
You know, every day brings opportunities to use your creativity.
Yeah.
You'll have someone. So, for example, in my world, someone comes and says, "Well, how can I use my knowledge to create a podcast?"
Mhm.
Okay, well, what's your knowledge? And someone may say, I like licking drywall. Not sure that's going to make for a great podcast. What other things do you enjoy? Or what is it about licking drywall? I
Yeah.
exaggerate on purpose, of course.
Yeah.
But, some people come to you with what they think is a really dry topic. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I like accounting. Ugh. I could just almost feel the room, their shoulders fall. I mean, but there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of people who are very passionate about the topic. But you can take something like that and have fun with it. Numbers are fun. I
Mhm.
geek out on numbers in some ways. I don't like sitting down and doing bookkeeping, but I
Mhm.
enjoy doing number analysis. So
Mm.
it's finding that magic spot that someone really enjoys, and you'll see it in their face. Their eyes will
Mhm.
dilate a little bit, maybe their face will flush up, those little micro signals will pop up when you mention it,
Mhm.
and you're like, okay, there's a spot we want to click in on, and how do you use it? And trust me, and you probably know this,
Mhm.
when someone's in their zone,
Yeah.
it's like, voice vomiting is just, wow. They're,
Yeah.
they're like me. They won't shut up. You're like, okay, got it. I can't write that fast. You're like, okay,
Uh-huh.
all right. Well, we have about 87 episodes already right here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's really, you, you have to find different ways
Mhm.
to tap into different styles of people's creativity, because not
Mhm.
everyone is what we would class a natural creative, like most
Mhm.
accounting type folks. You wouldn't you wouldn't fit them in that whole creative. I'm not going to go out and paint a Mona Lisa. But
Mm.
when it comes to numbers, that's where
Mhm.
their flow is. Their creative energy
Mhm.
just dumps out of them at that spot, and they find ways to creatively move numbers and make
Mhm.
things. Oh, well, if you did this, you could do that, and then you match that with this over here, and you can double your money. And you're like, your head is spinning, going, oh, slow down, slow down. You lost me at this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, how you support other people to find what they're passionate about and help bring it out of them. And
Mhm.
that takes a lot of creativity to ask the best questions to
And it's
elicit that.
you have to get creative with sometimes how you ask the questions, right, as
Yeah,
well as the very questions themselves.
absolutely.
Because if you're talking to a lawyer versus talking to someone who does, I know, gardening, right?
Sure.
There's different modalities. Usually
Hmm.
they think differently, or they
Yeah.
see the world different, you know, basic. Let's get past just who they are as people,
Hmm.
just how their brain works. It's like those whole all those tests that you get. Oh,
Yeah.
what quadrant are you in? Oh, I'm in B17. All right.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you sunk my battleship. Anyway.
Yes, exactly. No, it makes a lot of sense. What about like you for yourself? Where does creativity show up in your everyday life?
Creativity will show up in my everyday life. Oh my gosh. I don't want to give you the cliche answer like everywhere.
Well, why
Um,
not? Not everyone says that.
it really does, because I try to spend time doing things I like. I
Mm-hmm.
don't always get to do what I love, right? Everyone says do
Yeah.
what you love and the money will find you.
Huh.
I don't think that, like, again, if you like licking drywall, I don't know. Maybe there's a market for it. I haven't found it yet. But
Right.
if you think about it, if you do something you like, at least
Hmm.
like, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you can find ways to get over the humps, whatever the humps are.
Hmm.
And like if you're stuck doing spreadsheets and you're like, man, I really don't like spreadsheets, there are ways you can find some fun with them. It's like, okay, what if I did it to music?
Mm.
If you like music, right? Then you
Mhm.
start type. You'll find your fingers so will start going to the rhythm. A lot of times, music does well for me. If
Mhm.
I can switch my mood very easy with a few set of songs. I mean, I have a library that's probably pretty diverse. I almost said perverse. Anyway, I mean, I have everything from Bach to ABBA to AC/DC to ZZ Top to
Yeah.
Metallica, to some current music that is, I like going to these little known spots where these up and coming bands are at, just to
Mm.
hear,
Mhm.
so, and every one of them can inspire some sort of mood in you. So if
Yeah.
you're sitting there doing that spread and you're like, oh God, I'm on my third cup of coffee and it's just not doing it. Find that, maybe that piece of music that
Mhm.
will charge you up. Maybe it's a concert that you went to as a teenager, and every
Mm.
time you think about that concert, your hands in the air and you're bobbing your head. Well, put that on while you're doing that. I actually did this back in the day when it came to yard work. One of the
Oh.
things I hated when I bought my first home was
Mhm.
mowing the lawn.
Mm.
I hated it. And I say that with no problem.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the mower I had. Maybe it was the fact that I had a 15% grade in my backyard.
Oh.
It was just this combination of things. And I don't want to go out there and mow the lawn. So I, bought myself, this would have been the Walkman days, right? Bought myself a little Walkman and put the headphones in. And back then I was probably going through Personal Power with Tony Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put that in, or Zig Ziglar, somebody who charged me up. And the next thing you know, probably took me the summer, but I remember the following summer when it was like, I got to mow that first lawn. My daughter said, "You hate mowing lawns." Like, well, mowing lawns ain't that bad. My mind was starting to change. It's like, okay, this is my time where I can, for about 2 hours, I get to listen to something I really enjoy. And, nowadays I'm out there on the mower. I have a riding mower now, pop it in my favorite podcast, and I'm out there for just happily, bobbing my head along. My wife says, "You're over there, you're smiling, having a good time." So, but it wasn't always like that. You find something that charges you. If you like reading books, there's that. Maybe art inspires you, right? You hang a piece of art up. I'm big on having a space for the task, right? Whether it be, your garage for clinking around the house, or a space like for your podcast. Okay. And what happens is, if that's the space for your podcast, when you come in there, your mind is already starting to flip into that podcast mode. You ever saw the movie with Sylvester Stallone where he was the truck driver, and he was an arm wrestler? So I'm dating myself. For those of you who can't see, I have a long gray beard. But when he would step up to arm wrestle, whoever it was, arm wrestle, he would turn his hat around backwards, and you'd see the change in his face. Same principle. And he actually called it out in the movie. That's what I was doing. I was becoming this machine, and he was a truck driver, so he was pointing to the truck behind him, and it's the same thing. You sit down. I'm sitting in my space now here. Behind me, I have my drum set. When I come over, and when I leave this space, if I go sit over there, my mind's in a different spot. I'm ready to start banging around on it. So you have a space for everything. And don't mix the spaces is another suggestion, right? Don't try to be creative on the couch in front of the TV, because your mind is in this place where it says, "Oh, we're sitting on the couch and the TV is on. I know what that means. Wind down. It's time to turn the dials down." It's a subconscious thing, but it's still there, right?
Right. Yeah. Super. What a great list of ways people can tap into their creativity. You'll have to rein me in if I could. No, I love it. Going. It's so great. I mean, I think, many people are looking for ways to be more creative or find creativity in their life. And all of your suggestions of, your space, adding something you love to something that feels like a chore, are great ways to start flexing more creativity in your everyday experience and in your everyday life. Would you say anything different for someone who felt like they weren't creative? How would you encourage them to find creativity?
I think anyone that thinks they aren't creative is probably lying to themselves.
Ooh,
again, I'll come back to the point where I'm a big purveyor of being you.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. You see me, I got the long hair and the beard. That's just me, right? I learned a long time ago, no matter how funny I am or how charming or smooth and suave, right? I'm not Rico Suave. I won't be. There will always be somebody out there that doesn't like me. For whatever, maybe our energies don't align. Yeah. Okay. And once I figured that out, which was luckily enough, my mid to late 20s, it was like, I'm just going to be me, right? To heck with the rest. Here's the cool thing. I know our paths cross for a reason, whatever that reason is. You may be in my life 30 seconds, 30 days, 30 years. I have no control over that. What I do have control of is me. That's the only thing I have control of. If I do something to upset you, I can apologize, but I can't control how you feel about it after I usher that apology. I'm an only control of me. And that is very freeing in and of itself. Let's put that there as a presupposition to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're able to do that, and even if that just means you can only do that in whatever space that you've created,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you start in that space, create yourself a space, whatever it is, a closet in your home, a space in your garage. I'm flashing back to my dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he would go into the space and he would just disappear as himself.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else mattered. It was all about him, right? So have this space where you can be you. And that opens up a whole heartfelt or mind-felt set of creative flows.
Yeah.
And if you have something you enjoy doing, for me, that is creativity.
Mm-hmm.
It could be arguing as a criminal defense lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've seen those guys get up and give opening and closing defense motions, that's pretty powerful stuff. There's a creative flow that comes out of that.
That's really creative, I think.
Yeah. So even the things that some people wouldn't class as creative, I think for the person that loves doing that or likes it a lot, it is very creative. So create that space to do it and allow it to come out. And then my next step would be, let's make that space bigger. Again, this is, your comfort. We're going to come back around to the comfort zone. Now make your space from the closet to a whole room. From the room to your whole first floor or second floor of your home, from your home to your neighborhood, from your neighborhood to your city to your state, right? And next thing you know, wherever you're going, you're just being you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a great reminder how important it is to be yourself, and creativity will come. Like creativity happens when you are yourself. I
remember I had a bell go off. I was in Pittsburgh when my daughter was sick, and they have this amazing college there and these art and history museums, just phenomenal. And most of our major cities do. Yeah. And I remember going through and seeing all the different pieces of art. And art for me, art is very unique. No matter what the medium is, I can look at a piece of art and it could totally move me. I've had pieces bring me to tears. I've had pieces just make me do the kipper, the RCA dog. You're like, I don't get it, but it's okay. I don't have to get it. I'm not the artist. And that's one of the cool things about anything. If you're being you and you enjoy doing it, nobody else has to get it. Right. Somebody else will, right? Which is one of the nice things about the podcast medium, is that you can open yourself up, if you're willing to those that are out there that may get it, that resonate with you, and you'll find your audience and your tribe. But I think art is like that, and so many other things beyond, kind of fit into art. Writing is art. Right? Speaking, definitely an art. But you have to open yourself up to practice it, to get better. Like I said, I can draw like a madman, but when it comes to painting, I'm no Picasso. I love it. I love all of it. It has been such a treat to chat with you. I just have one last question. Sure. What does it feel like in your body to be creative? Freeing. Nice. It was, and it probably comes back to, I was an only child, right? And my dad was in the military. So we moved around every 1.5 to 3 years. So I lived all over the United States, spent, probably 6 years of my youth over in Germany. Right out of high school, I joined the military. I went back to Germany. But as I was growing up, like I said, the drawing thing was a part of it. So I won't rehash that. But it was something I did when I was alone. Yeah. Right? It was just, I would just draw. It was very freeing. And because I had seen such a varying array of things across even my childhood, right? Yeah. I had this eclectic mind movie set pictures to pull from, just sit there and scribble down. And then, I could go sit in my backyard. Maybe there was woods out there and there was a hawk sitting in a tree. I would sit there and I would try and draw the hawk. Because it was usually something I did alone. It became this moment of just complete freedom. Yeah. I liken it to where the last place we lived in, when we lived in Germany. It was like this farmhouse that they had split up into multiple apartments. And there was, we lived about 40 miles away from the main city. And it was really very Midwestern California, not California, Midwestern Wisconsin, Minnesota kind of rural. And behind us was farmland. And then behind that was this miles of woods. And I used to go, I was a young boy, right? What did boys do? We went exploring. And I was exploring in the trails of the woods, and I found this meadow. Now, if you've seen Twilight, you remember that meadow that they walked into? It was like they were walking through the woods, all of a sudden, right? The sun is shining down, the dew's on the grass. That became my drawing spot, that period of my life. I remember going there, sitting down in the middle or the side of the meadow and just drawing. No distractions, nature going off all around. You want to talk about feeling the energy. And I don't know how woo-woo you or anybody listening is, just feeling, you're sitting down, I don't know about taking your shoes off, but sitting on the grass, who cares if your butt's getting wet, just drawing anything. I could have been drawing. I did a lot of tank drawings being in the military. I was maybe drawing a war scene, even though it was in a very peaceful meadow. And again, it's a space that will allow you to open up your creativity, whatever it may be.
I love it. And hearing you talk about it definitely feels very freeing, that picturesque meadow to draw in.
Yes.
And thank you so much for sharing all of your tips and tools and insights. And if people want to learn more about the things that you do, how would they go about doing that?
Probably the easiest would be to check out the website, which is darkhorseschooling.com, just like it sounds.
Okay.
And they can check out the podcast, which is the Dark Horse Entrepreneur. We're on all the platforms, blah, blah, blah. But if they go to the website, all the socials are there. I'm pretty active on most of the major platforms. Come check me out.
Great. I will put all of that in show notes, so easy access. And thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with me.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.